resides under building automation. So you got industrial automation over here, we're building automation, and then you have all the sub-businesses in there. So we're building management systems. This is where the product resides for now. So we're in the HVAC controller world. Once we've established a foothold and it's, proved itself out, we've got really good adoption, then we're going to basically expand that out to the other businesses. I believe the next on slate for us is going to be fire. So repackaged, rebranded, released to the market here in June. So it's new, but it's not new, if you will. So there are some customers that have been exposed to it in the past that have good and bad experiences, again, for the reasons that I've listed. So it's very exciting to come back in for those customers. And if you've seen it before, the general impression is that, wow, this has come a long way. So I'm excited to actually walk you guys through the demo. But just a couple salesy stuff. So we have a team that was dedicated to going out and taking a whole bunch of information from end users. Yes, sir. Yes. And basically took a survey of about 100 different business owners across several different countries, across several different verticals, and this was the feedback that we received from them. So what's important to you as a business owner, building operator, the two big pillars here would be operational uptime and risk mitigation. That's not to say that the other two, which have pretty high marks here, energy resiliency and efficiency and compliance with regulations, aren't important. They certainly are. But those conversations tend to shift based on where we're at in the country. So, for example, if I'm out in West Coast and I'm in Oregon and I'm in California or I'm in New York, those kinds of codes, compliance, and legislation around sustainability and carbon energy tend to be a little bit different than it would be, say, in the Midwest. So it depends on who we're in front of when we say, hey, do we want to talk about sustainability? What are some of your kind of net neutrality goals? And they go, what are you talking about? We don't have any of those. So it's something that kind of originates on the coasts, if you will, and eventually makes its way in. So without further ado, let's keep going. Understand the priorities from a contractor type level. So we'll be able to provide a solution that we feel reduce your cost to serve. So it gives you that ability to remotely peer into your sites. You can manage a collection of sites, manage an individual site. So making those connected buildings approach, being able to remotely triage, digitizing your service case management, all in an effort to, of course, eliminate some of those truck rolls, and able to provide services remotely. Addressing skilled labor shortages, we've come a long way since COVID era, but there's a lot of other factors in play that seem that people, frankly, just didn't come back to work. We've got a lot of the changing of the guard, if you will, so a lot of the older folks are retiring. We've got a newer generation coming in. Those guys and gals aren't as, technically proficient yet. They haven't been around the industry long enough. So, this eliminates some of those highly technical people by, again, providing a solution that, has AI, machine learning baked into it. So it can help kind of guide you and simplify the whole process. We do provide tools here for incremental growth. So the cool thing about this platform, and I'll show you guys the screen in a second when we just kind of look at what the tiered solution is that it doesn't have to be a one for all. Like let's go all in and forge. So we can kind of piece this together. You can start with Remote Building Manager, or you could start with Carbon Energy Manager. We could tack those on, so you can provide incremental value and scale that up as needed. And then, of course, differentiating the product. That's not to say that we're not the only competitor out there or the only OEM with this type of solution. We do feel that our solution is more broadly useful than maybe some of the competitors that focus on, hey, we do analytics really well, or hey, we do the sustainability piece well. We really do feel that we have a very solid, robust package here. So that's about as slidesy as I'm going to get on you guys today. So let's just go down to what the package is. Okay, so a lot of information on the screen, and we will kind of take a little bit deeper dive as we go through the presentation on what the SKUs and descriptions and point counts and what all that entails. But for just the sake of getting started, let's look at the tiered software packages. So basically, you're looking at the left three in the red. So we've got a remote building. manager, we've got our predictive maintenance, and we've got the sustainability piece of that. There is a tool below that called the Insight Builder. We'll talk just a little bit about that today, but we want to actually demo that piece of that. That would be where you can go through and create customized dashboarding, customized widgets. But the three we're focused on, the remote, the predictive maintenance, and sustainability. And so you see for the remote building manager, we also have some sub-applications there, so it doesn't matter whether it's a 250-point solution. I know it says 500 on the slide. This does need to be updated. We do have a 250 package now. It doesn't matter which size package you get access to all these different applications, and we're going to walk through each one of those. You've got the predictive maintenance for the analytics piece of this, which is, think of this as the digitization of your service case management. So it's a service management tool, and then the sustainability piece. So let's get into the demo. Any questions so far?
Just to be clear, is this only software?
This is software.
Works with the hardware we're already using?
We'll get into the connectivity piece of that here in a second. All right, so if you've got access to a web browser, you can jump right into Honeywell Forge. You don't need to have your own specific piece of software. Let me just log back out, log back in. So connection-wise, we're open in port 443. We're whitelisting a couple URLs. It should be noted that our cloud service is not actually owned by Honeywell, so I don't know if that's a sigh of relief for you. It's actually owned by Microsoft Azure, so they do all the hosting for us. So with that comes the robust security that they provide, and we, of course, have all the documentation that we can provide those customers that are incredibly concerned about IT and cybersecurity. It's always a big conversation. So again, if you've got access to a web browser, you can jump right in. So HTTPS. Could you do it from a phone or a laptop, or excuse me, a phone or a tablet? Sure. It depends on how much real estate you have on that screen, whether that's going to be an effective way to manage your sites, maybe from just a remotely dashboarding perspective. Hey, I just want to get an idea of what's going on in my sites. That could be fine if you're looking at it from your phone, but if you want to get down into the nitty-gritty and start investigating points and alarms, making schedules, things like that, maybe not the most easy to do from that. We are developing some apps in the background that will address that issue. So for the connectivity piece of this is a agnostic solution. So it is a Honeywell product, but we play in any kind of sandbox, and we can go about that by basically creating connections with competitive sites using a Honeywell Forge gateway, as we call it. So the device is very simple, kind of looks like a Jace box, but it accepts Modbus, BACnet over IP. There's no licensing required with it, so a pretty straightforward device. We're going to have native connectivity built into our thermostats here soon. That's not released yet. So if you had sites with thermostats, TC500s, we can make that connection with the Forge gateway. We can, of course, use Jace, Optimizer, pretty solid platform in terms of different connectivity options. So, a lot of people, where does this go? Where does this play? Is it big? Is it small? Do you guys just focus on enterprise? And we kind of go all over the map. So as we go through this, I'll give you some specific examples where we're doing mom and pop stores, or we're doing large, campuses and enterprise type establishments. Any questions on that? Okay. So we're going to drill down to Honeywell US West here, and this has landed us into our KPI dashboard. So our key performance indicator dashboard. This is going to be where you land anytime you come into Honeywell Forge. It is pre-canned. These are predefined widgets. You can manipulate them. You can change the background color. You can move them around, but you can think of this as kind of your report card for how your site's performing. So within any one of these applications, we're either looking at this from a portfolio of sites view. We can look at it from a region sites view. We can look it down to those individual sites themselves. It's really however you're trying to process that information and who's peering in. We can set custom date ranges, of course. We're going to drill down this one step further to Honeywell Atlanta. So no, these are all going to be predefined. So to give you kind of a sense of this, you're not going to find anything that would deal with predictive maintenance in here, or necessarily Carbon Energy Manager. That's not to say that you can't tie that information in here. You can do that with our Insight Builder tool.
Just RBM.
Basically, yeah. So the supervisory, so this is part of the supervisory base package. And so not to get ahead of myself, but like when I was talking about being able to piece this together and not have to just come in full bore, you can come in with just the remote building manager as a base connectivity. That's going to get you access to the cloud, but we also have the ability to come in on the other side. If we got a customer that's not ready to go full bore cloud yet, we could start with like the carbon energy manager and just do dashboarding. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second, so that makes a little bit more sense. But we've got remote building manager, and so you don't have to have predictive maintenance. You don't have to have the other applications to have this screen right here. This is something that is included in the RBM package. So this is going to show us what our site looks like. So you can customize the graphic here. You could put your customer's building in there. You could put their company logo. You could put the CEO's picture, whatever you want to do. You can put yourself in there. Active alarms is going to show you for categorized, you know, what's high, what's medium, what's low. Across, again, we're going to look at this as multiple sites, single site. And again, just some other high-level general information that gets you a good starting point to say, where do I need to go investigate? What app do I need to choose next to kind of go figure out what's going on within this facility? Let's jump into the RBM itself. You can move them around on screen. You can make the background white or dark. If you wanted to get into full customization, then that would be an additional tool. It's called Insight Builder, and then you can go in and create custom dashboarding and custom widgets. So when you were to log into the Honeywell Forge platform, you would still come to the screen, but it'd be a click away from having your own personalized screen of up to 10 widgets per package. So you could come in and you could get very specific on the information that you want to create. So all the points that we're pulling across BACnet, all the points we're pulling across Modbus, you could get very detailed, quite endless, really, as far as that information and how you want to view it, whether it's bar charts, pie charts. If you want to look at heat maps, we could create heat maps. We could do all kinds of interesting things with that. So this is the remote building manager. This is what it looks like. This is going to be your remote service tool. So does this take the place of a supervisor? This does not take the place of a supervisor. You can think of this as an extension tool, again, to be able to peer into that site, manage it remotely. This is going to be where we're going to look at alarms, address alarms, create schedules, create overrides, get down into point data. We can see here from the connectivity piece, it's going to show all of your devices online for this Honeywell Atlanta site. We've got our cloud connection here that's online, and we've also got, since this is, of course, our demo, we've got the comfort score here listed out as temperature, humidity, and CO2. That's part of the carbon and energy manager, but since this is the full bore solution, it is included in this. If you didn't have carbon and energy manager, you would not see these tiles, the comfort and the energy usage index here, energy and carbon emissions. But again, since it's part of the full solution, you could click in here. And so that's another great thing about this is it's not memorizing a whole bunch of keystrokes or mouse clicks. It's pretty intuitive how you can navigate from one app to the other. You can make controls from one app and another. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute when we get into predictive maintenance. But everything here is read-write. So any changes that we make in the cloud get pushed down to that cloud connection and it get pushed out to the individual assets. So this is not a tool that's just used for monitoring. Okay, so schedules and overrides. This will give you a breakdown of what's going on there, of all the alarms that are on this happening within this site. And we can look at the summary of equipment here, several different views that we could check out. We've got the equipment level. So in our case here, it's certainly not limited to, but we've got air handler, electric meter, fan coil, gas meter, lighting plant, and variable air. So here we can get more specific. We can look at it at a device level, and we can get down to point level. For this example, let's go check out and see what's going on with the alarms. We've got VAB 102 and 108. This is a live demo. We've partitioned a couple of floors off from the Honeywell Building Automation headquarters there in Atlanta. So what do we have going on today? Our space temp, 68.5 Fahrenheit. The set point is at 68. Our humidity score is 40%, which you guys can see. It looks like that alarm has been addressed. Usually it references the outside air there, just to give you a heads up of what the outside air conditions are looking like versus what your set point, so just kind of be mindful of that. So this is a great place to start talking about points and how we come up with the subscription services themselves. So you see we have 14 different points here. Okay, so when we're talking those conversations with the customer, how do we come up with the point count? Where do we begin with them? And so several different ways that we could go about this. We have put together and just released recently a very handy tool, a little calculator that basically breaks down all of the different points across the various assets. So if you've got an air handler, it gives you the most common number of points. It gives you a description of those points. So from a customer's perspective and the contractor working with them, depending on what your relationship is and how involved it is, how much knowledge they have, would determine kind of where you begin as far as what points do you want to monitor, what points do you want to control. And so it's only the ones that are going to be monitored here or controlled that are going to be part of that subscription package. So when the device goes into discovery, and I guess we should kind of back up for a second. So this is all a self-serve solution. Honeywell is engaged for support. We want to be part of those initial conversations, most certainly for the initial onboardings. We've got a full bore technical team, sales team, business development team, offering team, all available to you to be part of those initial onboardings once you guys get comfortable, to make sure that it is a seamless and positive experience. That being said, it is self-serve, so it's part of our Honeywell Buildings, our e-commerce portal. The distributor would purchase that solution online, distribute that out via email to their partners. So for the contractors, once you guys pick it up, then the relationship between your customers. So you'd have somebody on site, whether they're their technical person, whoever the liaison for your customer that you're working with, you basically be sending that subscription to them. So for example, if you were going to purchase, let's just keep it real simple, we needed a Honeywell Forge Gateway, we needed an RBM 500 points, so the Remote Building Manager 500 points. Distribution would pick that up, they would assign that to you, and then you guys could assign that to that person on site. And then from there, it comes down to registering the gateway. Once you've established that connection with your customer, it's going to take you to the onboarding portal. That would be another training that I'd be happy to walk you guys through another time. But basically, this is where you would manage all of your subscriptions, all of your customers. You would see how many gateways you have active, how many subscriptions are active, what their expirations are, and so on. And from there, once that establishment is made, again, we make the connection to port 443, we whitelist those URLs, and then it goes through and it does its thing. This is an AI-powered tool, and it goes and it creates a digital twin of that site. So it's going to go through and it's going to pull every single BACnet point within that facility, and so that kind of ties back into what we're talking about here. I'm showing 14 points, Mr. Customer. How many points do you want to monitor? What do we need to include in the subscription package? And so this is kind of where we start to identify. Well, for this particular device, it might have pulled 70 points, but what do we want to monitor? Do you want to monitor these 14 and command and control these 14, or is it a smaller list? Some customers only want to view 3 or 4 pieces of information. So that's kind of how you determine what the subscription level is that you need for the solution for RBM. Differs a little bit from predictive maintenance, but we'll get to that.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
You said something about port 443. Say it has to be forward.
Just opened, yep.
Receive.
Port forward, I'm sorry, yeah. Yep. And I can send you guys all the documentation for the various, the 3 URLs that we need to whitelist, more information on the port 443, all the cybersecurity aspects of this. Okay, we could go through, we could look at trending for each of these devices, any of them, AHU, VAVs. We're in this VAV still, so we can have a look. We can look at it by monthly, daily, hourly, and minutes. We can customize what we're seeing on screen here. So if this is too much, if this is overkill, we can kind of whittle that down. Okay, so any questions on Remote Building Manager?
That invite system that you were talking about, when you set up the subscription, it's kind of like the old LCBS, right?
Not sure on LCBS. That might be before my time. So I've been with BMS for a year. I came from the fire side of the house, and I know that some of the acronyms prior that are no longer active products. Not familiar how that ties in. All right, so let's go over to the other applications that are included in Honeywell Forge for the Remote Building Manager piece of this. So we have a couple different tools in here that can help you manage the site, start putting dollars and cents together for the customer. One of these is going to be the opportunity assessment. So if there's, you're managing the site, there's no schedule in place, it can show you the potential for savings there based on your schedule compliance, temperature compliance, and set point compliance. It should be noted that this type of information may be something you want to reserve to yourself. So a lot of the contractors that we've worked with so far, don't want to provide access to their end users for this information here. They want to have that reserved for themselves so they can go back and say, Mr. Customer, based on us managing your site, creating these schedules for you, we were able to save you X amount of dollars, with their cadence meetings. So that being said, you could set up hierarchies within the system. So when you onboard a site with your customer, you can set up an unlimited number of users for that site, and you can create a persona for each one of those. For you managing the site, you may have internal people that you want to assign roles as well, but it just kind of based on what their experience level is, the comfort level, the SLAs. Do you want them involved in managing their site full bore, or is it maybe somebody that's like a local mechanic and he's doing BMS, he's doing fire, he's doing security, he doesn't have time to get in here and learn, remote supervision and, these kind of tools. Do you want to keep it simple? Who needs to be in the driver's seat, I guess, is where we're going with that. So, you guys have a lot of plays in terms of, how you set this up. It should also be noted that for the app itself, once you're in, you don't have multiple usernames and passwords to navigate from the various applications. So if I'm an RBM, I don't have to memorize a username and password also for carbon energy and predictive maintenance. Once you're in for your persona. And then there's Asset Lifecycle, which is a very powerful tool for managing your controllers on site. So I have two ways to kind of understand what the obsolescence of equipment is, or fault detection, if you will, across the site. This comes in the form of controller life. We break that down by the obsolescence that's baked into our specific device's firmware. So right now, this is a Honeywell specific solution. So across any of the Honeywell brands, I understand what the obsolescence of that device is, whether it's 10 years, whatever the shelf life is. And then it'll break it down by category. We can print that out in a nice report to the show, your customer. Hey, Mr. Customer, you've got 80 of these devices on site. They've now reached a state where there is no longer, additional sales. There's no tech support. There's no firmware or software updates at this point. It may be time to have those conversations about budgetary and migration strategies to replace these devices. So it's an upsell opportunity from the contractor perspective, and a value add that you're managing that site proactively. Let's click into one of these. It's going to tell us what the firmware is, the software, the product description, of course, our recommended action. So you can see the risk category for these is at its highest. So this is as I just mentioned, there's no sales, there's no tech support. It is time to replace these. It'll break it down however you want to process the information. If you want to put the least risk up front, great. If you want to look at the most risk first, however you want to present it out. And when it goes to print a report, it prints it in a nice clean format, nice document, all organized very well. So it's very easy for the customer to process and understand. And then we're going to spit out our recommended product. So I mentioned that this is a Honeywell only solution. That is a temporary deal. We are working in the background as hard as we can to basically pull information from our competitors, regarding their firmware and their EO end of life, so we can have a very holistic, single pane of glass, what's going on across all of the controls on our site. I don't have a time frame for that, but for right now, this is a pretty powerful tool for the Honeywell side of things. So those are the applications. So the key performance indicator dashboard, the remote building manager, opportunity assessment, asset lifecycle, those are what's included in the remote building management package. Again, whether it's a 250 base level, whether it's the high point count, anywhere in between, everything is included there. So I'll make a jump now to carbon and energy manager, but before I do, any questions? It's not per device, it's per point. So if I have a VAV and it goes out into its discovery mode and it pulls 80 different points off of that, it's up to you and the customer to determine how many points are you looking to monitor and control. So if they want to do 4, then you're required for 4 in the subscription.
But if they don't care to monitor the primary area, you still get information on application level controllers and their obsolescence and whatnot?
Yes, yeah, from that application perspective. So asset lifecycle tool here, yes, absolutely. But this is part of the RBM package. If you have that RBM package, it's going to make that connection to the site. It's going to pull those points when it goes into discovery mode. So you've already created a digital twin of that site, so that's how you're understanding what's happening there.
Describe which point. It shows you all the points that are available, and that's when you
Yeah, so it uses the AI tool to basically go through, again, create a digital twin. It's going to make about a 80%, its first pass is about 80% accurate. It's going to continue to cycle through until it gets through to 100. That's not to say this is non-human interaction. You're still going to need to look at it to make sure that you're verifying floor your floors, the naming conventions. Just make sure everything's kind of aligned with how you're ever wanting to monitor the site. Device associations for your downstream, upstream assets. But it's going to create a pretty slick layout. You just look at it. Is this correct? Is this not correct? It's going to do the heavy lifting for you guys. Okay, we'll get into Carbon Energy Monitor or Manager. So this is for those customers, again, is sustainability a conversation piece for them yet? Is carbon net neutrality, is that something? It just, again, depends on where we go in the country, whether people are interested in talk about it. But once they see this, there's value to them whether they're looking at sustainability or not, because now I can track my utility costs across all of my sites, whether it's portfolio, whether it's a single site. So I can understand what I'm looking at just as far as energy usage and utility costs, and we get very specific, whether it's gas, water, sewer, so on. But there's a couple different flavors of this. There's the Carbon Energy Monitor. So this is going to be kind of what I was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation, where are they cloud conscious? We're still kind of in that world. I know it's crazy. In 2025, everything that we do is connected to the cloud, but operationally speaking, from business owners, they're very touch and go about what information they want to go to the cloud. Obviously, cybersecurity is always going to be a concern. So for those customers who really just kind of, got cold feet about it, we can start them out with a solution like this that doesn't touch the cloud at all. It gets them used to dashboarding. And from there, once they've used it for a while, okay, Mr. Customer, are you ready to jump into remote building management? Kind of, again, providing value add as we piece the solution together and scale it up as they get more comfortable. But we can create these custom time ranges of information that we're looking at. But this particular application is going to use a API connection direct to the utility. So we're not actually making a connection to the cloud. This particular package is called Carbon Energy Monitor. This little gear icon here, you click that open, and I won't do this again. This is a live demo. We have our account information in there, but you'd basically pop that open, type in your utility provider, or start to type it in, and it'll populate it. I cover North America. I haven't seen any utility provider so far that hasn't just automatically populated, so we work pretty much everybody. Click on that, enter your user, the customer's user, they would enter their username, their password, put in their account number, and within 30 minutes, this information from the utility provider gets pushed to this dashboard. So straight away, out of the gate, they have dashboarding tools, no need for individual people to go out and have to pull individual reports for each of their said utilities. And so this becomes a very handy tool, obviously from understanding what's going on from a portfolio perspective, what are my costs across all of my locations, who's my highest offenders. Let's drill down and get very specific information from that level, but also from a labor perspective. I've got a ice skating rink company up in Canada that has about 35 locations, and their big deal was we don't want to spend our time pulling the utility bills every month. It's time consuming for each one of those sites to have somebody go pull their gas and their electric, and then it gets pushed up to the overall person who manages all of that, compiles that together, and puts together nice clean reports and yada yada. Once they've established this, it's done. So once they've made their connection for all their sites, they're no longer required to have to obviously go out and pull those reports. This thing is ongoing. And so we've got real-time information. Real-time information really is, not down to the minute, but every 15 minutes it's pushing that information. So pretty slick. There's a couple of different levels of this. So this was the Carbon Energy Monitor. If they're comfortable with this and they're ready to go to the cloud, but hey, maybe they're still not ready to go to Remote Building Manager, they don't need the remote service piece of that. The next step could be, let's go to Carbon Energy Optimize. This would require RBM at this point. So we've kind of taken the next level, but maybe, again, their focus is still using it from Carbon Energy. If they want to tie it into their sub-meters, we can do that as well. I've got some pretty slick tools that are coming down the road as far as like tenant billing. So if you've got commercial high-rises, a common thing that we hear from those end users is that I've got floors that are owned, entire floors that are owned by specific customers. And so we have our occupancy hours of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And sometimes these guys, they have events after hours. We want to be able to track the energy usage when they come in after hours and make set point adjustments. And then obviously tie in a billing program with that as well. So that's something that is coming down the road. Looking forward to that next year. But for right now, we can pull that sub-metering data. And another addition to this is going to be the last piece of the optimize. So as the name would imply, it gives us the ability to use AI tools to go through and understand what's happening in that facility in terms of your temperature scores, your occupancy, your outside air conditions, and it basically makes automatic set point changes every 15 minutes using the AI tool. So how engaged or how involved does the customer want to be or the contractor want to be? Do they want to manage the site on their own? Do they want to sell out the site to create its own schedules? A lot of flexibility here. Any questions on Carbon Energy Manager? And lastly, we'll get into predictive maintenance. So we could really spin off down the rabbit hole today. In this application, I'm going to keep this very high level for you guys, just to kind of understand what the program is, what it does, how it holds its information. So this is a little bit different in terms of when we get into like the subscription count of what we're looking for. So this uses analyzed points versus the RBM's, point to point. So we're not a one-to-one relationship in this app. The math equates to roughly 30% of the total points that we would be using for RBM. Again, we have a handy calculator that's going to do all the heavy lifting, all the math for you. It's going to go through, identify the most common points. You can refine that down with your customer. Are these the one that you want to monitor? And then it's going to spit out your total number of subscription points for your entire facility, and it's going to break that off into RBM, predictive maintenance, and Carbon Energy Manager, so then you can present it out to the customer. But this is your service management tool, so the digitization of your service cases. It is a AI machine learning tool, but it is a rules-based system, and rules meaning that based on a very large collection of rules, about 330 of them, it's an if-then condition. If any of these rules are triggered, then a service case is generated. The AI piece comes to that in a second, as I'll show you, but we've got a lot of different perspectives that we can look at here. I'm in Honeywell Atlanta. I'm going to go up here and just select year to date. And we'll come over here. We'll just take a brief look at some of these rules so you guys can understand kind of what we're working with here. And so I mentioned that the solution had been around for 10 years and that we released it here in June. So that should put a little bit of ease to your mind that this is something that's been released, but it's not brand new to the market. It's brand new in this current iteration. But I mentioned this to say that these rules that we have fine-tuned have been fine-tuned for a very long period of time. We have fed this thing 12 million service cases at this point, and are fairly pleased with its ability to try to provide us the correct description of the product, the problem, as well as the recommended action for fixing the problem. So you can customize any one of these rules. So if you see something you like and you want to fine-tune it down to its specific thresholds, we could certainly go about that route. You could turn it off if you don't think that applies to you. You can create your own rule if you want. And then, when the system spits out a service case, it'll tell you, did it come from Forge Analytics or did it come from a user-defined? And of course, you can call it whatever you want as far as the name and, how it gets labeled out to who sent it. But let's click into one of these. So return air fan speed command signal overridden. This is where we go through and we can configure those values. So if there's, you don't like how this is performing, you can kind of prioritize it. Actually, I'm going to come out of here and go to something that's more hardware related. Let's see if this pops up what I'm looking for. I don't know, but so again, customizing what it looks like in terms of its priority. Is this a high criticality item when it triggers that service case? Is this something that's just kind of low level? Where does it need to go into the priority scale when we start looking at hierarchy, customized mapping for how are we going to manage the site today? I'll show you what that looks like in a second. You can assign who it gets sent to. So does it need to go to the local maintenance, local mechanical? Does it need to come to the contractor? Does it need to come to both? Who within that group does it need to get assigned out to? And also here is where you can go through and define what your labor and your part cost is. So this gives us the ability to have conversations with the customer. Mr. Customer, we've had a fault on this particular, item here, and it happened on X amount of date. It's been in fault for X amount of hours. Our parts, part cost, labor cost is here, and that's basically going to spit out a number to say each day and each hour that goes past. as your potential loss there. I'll show you also what that looks like here in a second. This is where you would customize that information. We can look at it from lots of different personas. So just from the facility summary, we'll go back. So kind of like the remote building dashboard, the initial screen is going to be pre-canned widgets, if you will. You can arrange them, you can manipulate them. If you don't like the information you see here, we can customize those out using the same tools that we would for RBM, or excuse me, the Key Performance Indicator with the Insight Builder tool. But again, report card of what's going on with your site. I'm going to go over to Honeywell Raleigh real quick. I like this one right up here, this top 10 assets to review today. Usually this list is much larger, but it kind of puts a focus on how do you prioritize your site visit should you have to go to site and you can't remotely triage it from here. If I've got to go, am I facing the most critical issues on site today, or is there something else that has a higher priority, and you can manipulate those priorities, basically giving yourself a strategic roadmap to make yourself more efficient while you're on site, getting you in and out and off the job. Cost savings, of course, there for the customer as well, getting you in and out. So just from service case management piece of this, we can look at overall asset performance health. We could look at it from an energy performance perspective, and all the service tickets that are generated against that, and so on. Let's get into asset performance. So we could break it down by asset type. I think the easiest way to view this information is to go right into here to the buildings and just look at what's been identified, what's in progress, and what's been completed. I'm going to switch over back to Atlanta. We're still year to date. So up here it shows realized 0, identified 6.5. So this column right here of all the different service cases that have been identified have that dollar amount associated with them. So those are the labor and part costs that we were showing. So it's collecting all the those tickets together for all of your labor, all your part costs, all those tickets, and then the lost is going to be inaction for those to have been resolved. So you can basically say, Mr. Customer, here's the cost of us not doing this. Let's click into one of these service tickets. We've got zone temperature sensor out of limit, so it's got a priority scale of 9, so we're not at the very top end of the criticality, but it is quite high. Again, you can change this if you feel that it needs to be reduced. What's our priority? It's identified, maybe it's completed. But again, here's where we're going to look is when was it created, when was the fault last active. It's going to show right here the source is going to be Forge Analytics, so it tripped one of those rules, and the assignee group here in this case is going to be facility management, and then so that's going to be on site, and then it's going to go specifically to their operations group. It's going to show you where it originated, so the location here is 4.2. It's been active for 33 days in fault, 360 hours. And then overdue SLA status. And then we can get into the specifics of what's going on for this description or this particular service case here. So we'll go up here. If this information is not already populated down here, you can go up and click Generate AI Insights. And this is where that AI piece of this comes into it. So again, feeding this thing 12 million service cases over a very long period of time, it's giving us the ability to kind of refine it, help it learn. We are in that crazy world where, it's we've come a long way since Alexa and Siri, and basically if you ask it a question, it was referencing back to Wikipedia. And we're kind of now in the chat GPT age, which is it's scary, but pretty awesome at the same time. It has the ability to go through and learn and understand what's going on. So we do ask, when it pops up this information, if you find that that is valid, if that makes sense, give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down, help it refine itself. Same thing for the recommended action here. So right now what we're seeing on screen is text, but here very soon we'll have this to where it will be typing. So you could have that one-on-one interaction with the chatbot, and that will shortly be followed by throw a headphone in. So if you're a technician, you're on site, you're working on, got your hands tied up in a machine, you could be having that one-on-one conversation with your chatbot. Hey, I've tried this recommended fix, this didn't work, what's your next resolution? You would be able to ask it for user manuals, YouTube videos for how-to fixes from the manufacturer. We could have this tie into work order management tool. So we do allow the creation of APIs. It's not something that Honeywell initiates. So if you had a customer and yourselves wanted to create something that would make a direct integration into your workflow work order management tool, we could kind of help guide you on that. But think like Maximo or Salesforce, so when it generates the service ticket, it automatically creates that work order for you. Additionally, we could, and this is coming in the future, where you could take a photo of set of pieces of equipment that you're working on. It would identify the manufacturer that you're working on, the specific part number. You could potentially tie that in through an API to your warehouse. Do we have this on the shelf? What's in stock? What's my cost on it? So you can have those immediate conversations with the customer, particularly if you didn't have your truck didn't have the part that you were looking to fix that day. A lot of cool stuff coming down the road for this. Again, we feel it's pretty robust in terms of its capabilities of spitting out accurate service cases. Let's see. We'll look at fault summary. Again, a lot of different ways to process some of the same information here. I do want to go back real quick to this service case just so we can show kind of what ties into the remote building manager. Any questions? Okay. So from a health perspective of our air handler or any device in here, so we have complementary services here, Will. So for the customer, Mr. Customer, I'm able to understand what your controller asset health is on site, hardware obsolescence risk, and I also have a tool called predictive maintenance. Now I can start peering into your end assets and understand what their health looks like. Are they nearing their obsolescence? Are they creating unusual service case tickets? Are they generating an abnormally high amount of service case tickets? So you can start understanding, just a proactive approach, what's going on throughout this entire site. So we can look at any one of these devices, AHU, we can break down a score. It's going to take your score based on how many service cases it's been generating over a given period of time. We can look at those trends across a given period of time as well, last 30 days, last 3 months, 6 months, last year. We can look at the overall performance here. I think this is a pretty powerful view here when it populates down here, so we can understand all of these different service cases that have been populated against this asset and kind of show you what they look like, again, over a range of time. Is this out of the norm? Okay, what the history of the device is, what the current live values are, and so this is what I wanted to show. So remote building manager, your remote service tool, you have the ability to go through, you make your set points of changes. This is another avenue that you could use to make and remotely triage these assets without having to fumble between the two different applications. So just kind of streamlines process. Again, you don't have to memorize one route to get to a particular direction here. So anything with the drop down here, we can view and make changes to. If you want to navigate quickly, you can kind of just go up here and select specific to what you're wanting to look at. Okay.
Those histories, are those stored in Microsoft servers, or pulling those histories from the Niagara system?
Pulling from the Niagara system.
So something like history of Niagara, in some history after it's connected.
All the history is going to be stored on your supervisor, your JACE, your optimizer. I don't believe that gets pushed up to the cloud, or it gets pushed up to the cloud for us, but we don't store those values on the Microsoft servers. Okay, show you all the related assets as far as what's upstream, downstream, and all the service cases that are generated against this specific asset here. And then lastly, we can look at the activity against this as well. So you can kind of start to understand, is it triggering rules? Is it triggering rules made by Forge Analytics? Is it something that we've defined? What's the, changes that have been made to it? Who's the last technician that worked on it? Put your own notes in there so you can see what the outcome of that was. It's a pretty powerful tool. And lastly, for this particular application, we're just going to look at the asset lifecycle cost details. So again, like the asset lifecycle for the controllers, This is something that you can print out in a nice clean report. So you could show both of these to the customer. Hey, this is what it's costing you. These are the budgetary, conversations that we need to start having, so you can understand how these assets are performing. By service ticket, by particular asset, and break it down costs for each. Right?
You modify and change.
Yes, you can.
But all that's in play, with all the analytics.
Correct. Yeah, so that list of rules, you basically can determine which ones you want to use or not use, and you can create your own. So you can't completely eliminate them, you can't delete them off of the system, but you can just disable them. And then you can tweak them as well. So when we first went the rules, you can go through and you can change the characteristics, parameters of it. If you didn't, think that this particular service rule should be triggered to a high category, you could change it to low. If you don't want to just, change just generic values, you can schedule out the priority of it as well. All of that's going to be defaulted, and you can change that as well. So whether you determine, based on your relationship with your end user, maybe, based on SLA relationship, comfort level and ability of end user who's on site. Is it somebody in IT who's going to be turned in? Is it a C-level guy? Whatever. You can define out who it's going to go to and it's specific within that group. So does it need to go just to their facility? Is that the mechanical guy? Is that electrical? Who does that get assigned out to? So these are defaulted, but you can make those changes. And you can also determine, does that go out to the contractor as well? Does it go out to the facility and the specific person there?
So workload analyzing, is that done? Is that done?
The analyzing of the rules would be done on Microsoft. Yeah. So that's the work that's being performed in the cloud. This is what the onboarding portal looks like. And so if you guys are interested, you like what you've seen today, we could schedule another session remotely where we could just walk you through what an actual site onboarding looks like. And so that's the question that comes into play next. How do I account for labor costs? How much is involved with this? What does this look like across a small site, an enterprise level site? Where do we play? So as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a lot of different connectivity options. So whether we're going full-blown, enterprise level system, I can tell you right now we're working through and finalizing a very, very large university in Tennessee, very large campus, great solution. They're going to allow us to use them as a white paper and case study. We basically deployed a pilot there. Have used that pilot to create some baselining information and prove out our return on investment. Really great news there, but we kind of play in all the sandboxes, so we can go down to your mom and pop store as well. So we work with a cell phone manufacturer that's got hundreds of storefronts across the country. A very small square footage place. They don't have a BMS in the store, but we use their TC500s. Connect to it with the Honeywell Forge gateway. The Forge gateway, again, there's no licensing required for it. We've set it at a price point that we feel is very competitive. We're not trying to make a ton of money in the hardware. We want the connectivity piece of that because this is a annual subscription service. So, if you've got a mom and pop store, they've got 3 or 4 locations, they want to get connected up. Hey, that's great. Maybe they don't need the full-blown RBM. They just want to take the carbon and energy manager piece of that, kind of like we're saying, so they can understand what their utility cost is. A lot of different ways to go about this, but as far as the time that's involved for onboarding a site, I hear if it's a very large enterprise site, we could take, a couple days, but we've shaved it down from a couple weeks to a couple days. If it's a site that's got 30, 40,000 points, they could do this in 3 or 4 hours. So it's not a set it and forget it kind of deal. You could get the site ready, get it onboarded, we open up that port, we whitelist the URLs it goes through, and it makes its first pass. It's going to get that 80% completion, and it continues to cycle through. Like I said, there's going to be some human interaction there. We've got to, just make verification, a device association, and so on. So not complete set it, forget it, but smaller site, 3 or 4 hours. Larger site, couple days. Again, we do want to be part of those initial first-time endeavors with you guys, just to make sure everything goes smoothly and you guys have a positive experience, your customers have a positive experience. But like I said, if you want to see what an actual onboarding looks like, we'd be happy to walk you through one of these, and we could do a virtual onboarding session. But this is the portal that you would use once you've, basically taken on your subscription from distribution. This isn't something that the customer would see, so this isn't the end user application. This would be specifically for managing your subscriptions, your customers, your partners, understanding how many different gateways you have out there, what are your sites, when are they coming up for renewal. Something else to be said is they've got 30 days post-renewal before it just deactivates. It's not a hard cutoff. You'll get plenty of notification, hey, you're coming up for renewal. Do you want to continue off the services and so on? And the last thing I'll show you guys is going to be we'll go into Site Manager. So Site Manager, not in the price books yet. This was just released about 3 weeks ago. So this really simple. I should have showed you guys this when we were doing the Building Manager, but this is really kind of an extension to simplify the process of a remote building manager. So if you've got those guys, like I always keep mentioning the mechanical guy on site that's wearing the multiple hats and, master of everything, or jack of all trades, but doesn't really intimately know any one of these systems. This is a real simple way, just like we would for your manager home thermostat. We pull up an app, we look on thermostat, we change the values, we turn it off, we turn it to heat, we turn it to cool. Same kind of deal here. So you don't have somebody that has to jump into a remote supervisor and go through different point level, different information and make set point changes there. They can come through. It's a very simple widget here. This is at the site level, so you wouldn't be controlling all of your sites, through the application here. And we can also do lighting here. If you're not going to be controlling lighting on that site, we could remove the lighting altogether. Give you a breakdown of the alarms here. So as far as the subscription services go, just to kind of go back to this for a second, you've got several different options. We can piece together the starter package, which would be your remote building manager. So that's cloud connectivity. You could tack on predictive maintenance as you go down the road. Don't have to have it out of the gate. The sustainability piece of it, we could come in here and just make that carbon and energy monitor connection to your API. No cloud connection required, so it would not require RBM. If they want to go up to that next level, they do want to have carbon energy tie into their remote building piece where they can make schedule changes from there. They could do sub-metering, and eventually here soon, at the beginning of next year, that optimization where it uses the AI to automatically make updates. That would be the next level up. And then lastly, the Insight Builder tool here, where we would use that to create the custom dashboarding and widgets. Hey guys, that brings us to the end. I hope that made sense and wasn't a whole bunch of confusing information, but what questions do you guys have?
Forge Gateway, do you understand it's BACnet, Modbus, so it's not really brand specific?
No.
Put on top of AMC or something like that.
Yeah, that's our solution to be able to bridge to other OEMs. Yeah, and no licensing required as far as Niagara licensing.
Legacy, proprietary brand stuff, like training.
It depends on how old it is, and we'd have to be specific on the piece of equipment. So if you had something in mind, I could ask. But by and large, I don't know what the cutoff is, but it's fairly robust in terms of its connectivity options. Or again, it's just reading BACnet and IP, or it's BACnet Modbus points. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Building network controller is, and it just does stuff.
Correct. Yep.
Is that gateway in with your pricing, or is that separate?
It's separate. Yeah, so the gateway is separate. And as I mentioned, we're not trying to make a whole bunch of bucks on the gateway. If you're taking over a competitive site, we want to be part of that. So we've priced it out, like I said, very, very fairly.
You need the gateway and then software pack.
Correct.
So this software price annual cost? or-
This is annual. This is annual. Yep.
Building,
Billed annually, yes. You have the ability to select up to 3 years right now, and they're working on packages up to 5 years.
years.
1 year minimum. 1 year minimum. We have basically a range right now of 1 to 3, but we are looking to extend that up to 5. You would be responsible for helping them manage their subscriptions. So that would kind of tie back into the onboarding portal here, which then becomes your subscription management portal. So this would be the tool that you use to not only bring on customers, so you go in there and create, you make that association to whoever if you're working within that facility. This is the same tool that would also be used for the creating the digital twin. So it's mirroring. This is where you pull in all those points. Once that's completed, you're basically looking at the information here. What gateway do they have on site? Is it active? Is it pending subscription? What the subscription level is, when it expires, and so on. So, at any point in time, you could look into this onboarding portal, see every single one of your customers and where they sit as far as subscription, who's coming up for renewal, so you can start having those conversations. They will receive emails from Honeywell, should you so choose, to say, hey, you've got 6 months left in your subscription, you've got 3 months left in your subscription, and so on. So you don't have to just completely be in the driver's seat on that. Right.
It's pretty critical on your side. You can establish a standard on how you define who the stakeholders are, like who the facilities level manager.
Right. Yep. Yeah, but I've got a list too to break down, like, each one of those personas that you create, what access do they have to the site here. So, you may have in the instances where I was talking about the asset lifecycle tool, where we're looking at the controller health and the opportunity assessment. We're looking at temperature, set points, compliance. What I'm seeing right now is that contractors want to hold that to themselves as a tool to have conversations with their customers to say, based on my management of your site, I was able to save you X amount of dollars. Based on the management of my site, I understand that you're coming up for, this particular device is no longer, being serviced. So there's the value I play there. So, whether you want to sign out a full subscription to your customer and give them full access depends on who you're working with and what that relationship is. So if you want to limit their access and just keep them to kind of dashboarding level to where they're coming in and they're seeing this generic, not generic, but high level report card style information on the KPI dashboard, you can do that. Do you want to provide them access to have full-blown remotely management access and then go through and create, set point changements and create schedules and overrides and all that stuff? You can do that as well.
After looking over your site, we think here's the cost of doing this. Here's return on your investment.
So until we get in and create like a baseline for them, and so like for example, if we were looking at Carbon Energy Manager, that's also a baselining tool where you can say, I've got 3 years of historical data right now from your utility. Once we've made that connection, you can kind of start understanding what the trends are. You create a schedule, but to really understand what true return on investment is, we need a period of time. And so that's why I brought up the university that we're working with in Tennessee. So that was a big selling point for them. We're like, we think this is a great solution. We could see how it add value, and we'd like to manage it, but we don't really fully understand the return on investment. So we went in, we established the applications for 3 months, and then that allowed us to come back on the backside, put a report, based on baselining, we were able to say, here's where you are, here's where you're at today. So, if customers are on the fence, again, this is kind of new stuff. We could certainly create and look at some kind of pilot program for them as well. Maybe they wanted to start small instead of, hey, I've got 30 buildings. I'm not ready for 30 buildings. Let's do one of my buildings and see how this goes, and then we can talk about next steps kind of deal. So you could come in with like an RBM 250-point package, guys, and this is very, very, I can't, obviously disclose price in here today, but it's a very cost-effective solution. If you want to just come in as a trial pilot, let's do 250 points. Even if they needed the gateway's not expensive. Not expensive.
I mean, we have like a look, and I think find a lot of this stuff interesting. What's the price point?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay.
Deal with that because there's no way they're going to pull it full. Do you have any kind of solution for that?
We can talk about it. Yeah, we can talk about it. Let me get my technical team involved with that.
Yeah, they have like 4 buildings down, they have a bunch of substations, like remote, they're trying to monitor them, so I think a lot of this would benefit them greatly, maybe asking about something like this. I don't know how to approach that. Here's the cost, usually we throw that.
You pay back.
Give them a payback,
Yeah.
especially in the wonderful.
Right.
They always look at it that way.
Yeah, no, I understand. You know, yeah, unless we do, again, pilot site, create a baseline, prove it out from that perspective. Anybody else?
So I do. So just, okay, so you have a building. Let's say we put a case in there, which we do in a lot. We put your gateway in. Assuming that the J's to the gateway is going to probably be BACnet.
If you have a JACE, you don't need a gateway.
Oh,
The gateway is only needed for sites that we're going to be taking over competitive OEM.
okay. So if you have a J's, you don't need the gateway.
Correct.
So it's communicating via what? To your what? What? HTTP.
Yeah, HTTPS, so IP connection.
Okay, so are you relying, okay, so once all this information gets to the cloud, what then? Does it know, I mean, what, is there a lot of configuration that has to be done?
See, there's a little bit of use that one dashboard. You basically put it in buckets. You get your
So
scores.
we're not relying on tagging or anything like that to help that.
You mentioned like 3 or 4 hour configuration. Is that just to get it to 80% accuracy, or is that to take it from 80 to 99?
That's to take it, that's full bore. So again, depending on the level of site, we're saying, I think I mentioned 30,000 points or something like that for 3 to 4 hours. That's to completion. That's to completion. Right. I mean, you guys be working hand in hand, or the contract be working hand in hand with the end user, just to, you know, if they have somebody technically experienced on that site and they have a specific, like maybe naming convention that they want to use for different floors and different devices. Or if they don't have one, and, you know, it's up to the contractor and you guys kind of look at it from that perspective. You know, you're basically making sure the device associations are aligned, making sure your naming conventions are there. If you've got multiple buildings that you're managing, it's going to learn how you performed in that first building, and it's going to standardize that for your additional build outs. So you can make changes, but it's going to kind of learn how you do that. So if you had a specific way that you wanted to name the devices on a floor, it's going to know that for your next onboarding, for your next building in that portfolio, to say, okay, this is what you did over here, so we're going to continue that.
If you already have a control system in, and it just pull the naming.
Mhm.
It's great.
Yep.
And then you're just verifying that it's got it correct. So
Got
you
it.
don't have to physically go in and rename every single thing.
No.
It's just going to pull the names.
Yeah, exactly right.
This guy will look the analytics already by
What's that?
most analytics require a tag so that it knows which bucket to put in when it's applying the rules. How does that mechanism happen?
Not to get back to you on the tagging piece of that.
Because in order for mixed air temperature to have any relevancy, it has to get tagged to follow that rule set.
Mhm.
And so I don't understand, I can understand it absorbing the names, but somewhere somebody's got to take those temperatures, tell them that they're discharge air sensors, that that's a mixed air sensor, and associate it with a piece of equipment for the rules stream.
Sure. Yeah, we can pull an attack on that. I don't want to speak out of turn and give you an incorrect answer.
Okay.
The point roles is just going to be who's managing the site. So whether it's a local IT person, or, you know, if you had like the C level that want to provide access, that just refers to what, when you onboard the solution, you assign out the building, who's going to be managing that building from a contractor and end user level. What personas, what access do they have to the Honeywell Forge itself?
Even like so I was able to play with RBM the last couple of weeks. So like when you pull the points, I noticed that there's like, so like if you have space that roll is zone temperature,
Mm-hmm.
is that the same thing that you're talking about?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
think that might be on.
It's tagged.
Yeah,
That's what they're doing with tag.
I think that's.
So if it's not tagged, You're doing some level of machine learning to try to figure out what it is, and then you bring that up.
You say that the points come in and you're gonna tag, you're doing the tagging process.
Yeah, there's like
40 minutes.
I have a very elementary understanding of it. I just play with it for an hour, but I think that's for that.
You said if you have Jace, don't need a gateway.
Correct.
You license this on the Jace? Might have missed that. I was like 5 minutes in before we got it. But
License on the Jace.
the license on the Jace.
You would have a license with Niagara license on the Jace. For the solution itself, you would just do the Honeywell Ford SKUs.
And if you have a supervisor, it connects to supervisor, still
Right.
don't need Jace.
You can go either way.
Bingo.
Yeah.
License each
So the no licensing piece of that's going to be for the Honeywell Forge Gateway. So if we're connected through TC500 or we're connected to another, competitive OEM, that's the no license gateway.
If you do use base or super as your gateway license after this, you're totally in the mercy of like all your history, alarming, pointing, like all that obviously needs to be rock solid. And
Yeah. Correct. Correct.
You can get hit up with rock solid and Jace. Pretty good.
I've never seen it not.
You mentioned making, you can't take points you selected and then make your own one in RBM for
I don't believe so.
it's using the alarms that are at your.
Correct.
This thing pretty bandwidth light.
Yes.
That'll come up to security as it leaves the site and how much are you going to eat up on the pipe?
I'm still waiting for clarification on the exact math of how, based on point levels. If it's 10,000 points, how much data am I pulling? If it's 200,000 points, how much am I pulling? I haven't seen any documentation on, what that looks like yet.
I'm guessing that's a pull to, not a live connection all the time, right? It's pulling it every so often.
It's a live connection.
It is live connection.
It is a live, yeah,
It wasn't always open.
always on, yeah.
Existing devices on the through Jesus are not back in Modernization today, Lon.
So we don't have lawn support. There was talks about developing that, but if that lawn connects into the larger system, then, we basically feed into whatever's being fed up to that Jace.
Well, that's a very good question. Jace can normalize all the points. So if you're coming through a Jace,
Yeah.
do you care what's behind it? You don't
No.
care what's behind it.
No, I don't care what's behind it.
We're going to create an export table.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, is there a service that gets installed on the Jace?
Yeah,
Like
he said there-
Project ASAC type stuff?
It's utilizes Haystack, but you don't have to, there's nothing that's additional software that's required to be installed to a Jace to access the Forge applications, the connected solutions.
In that scenario, his lawn scenario, point exists in the Jace. Could Forge see that
Yes.
Niagara point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's a BACnet point, we can see it. It's a Modbus point, we can see it.
And the same J's lawns underneath. License to the J's.
Yeah.
The cloud.
Yes.
Via tag and network.
Yep.
Protocol.
Correct.
So you said if it's BACnet, you mean you'd have to export that BACnet from the Jace?
Yes.
The gateway, if the gateway is employed, it's got to meet your protocol list. If a Jace is there, the Jace has just got to normalize it.
Right.
All the Jace can talk to it, we can get to this app.
That's correct. All right, guys. What else?
Starting with the 500 point license. The way I understood it was like all those points that are there in the Jace, you see us. And you just start splitting on with this on, with this on. Is there like a bar that show, hey, you're about used up on your license to where they can start then taking things away?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Because that is how it works. It's not like you define the points before you start.
Right.
You're doing-
Click away. Yeah, no, exactly right. Yeah. I'm not sure how it does the math there. To be honest with you, I haven't seen it.
Or you just click that last one and go, you're out.
Yeah, I don't know.
You deselect.
Get rolled up.
Deselect, yes. Yes.
I mean, all of it's been done before it starts.
Yes, they need that on the screen.
As in,
like when, faults and insights and.
Once that establishment's made, so if it's, once it's onboarded, it's a live site. It's going to pull whatever's being pushed up from the connectivity. So if there's alarms on site, it's going to push immediately to the.
That's a little bit.
If it triggers any of the parameters and any of those rules of predictive maintenance, it's going to send out, and these, we're talking two different applications here. So you've got the alarms that are being pulled up directly from what's happening on site. Predictive maintenance is going to be the rules-based system. So, if you don't have predictive maintenance hooked up, it's not going to trigger any of those rules. That's not what's necessarily generating alarms. That's generating service tickets, service cases.
Yeah, the customer though, they wouldn't like, so, if you have a 500 license and there's 2,500 on the site, but the customer doesn't necessarily see 500 units and picking what they want. If you're doing that and getting that to them, right?
That's correct. So from a contractor level, you're going to be managing what sites that they're going to need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they log in, they're not gonna say, oh, let's see these things today, like you're doing all that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Okay, so guys, for the ones of you had, deeper technical questions and I can answer today, make sure I get my business card to you today. We'll get on the phone with, our tech team and make sure that all this is hashed out so you guys are comfortable and you guys have the answers that you need. Or if anything lost in the wayside. Other than that, it's a great presenting to you guys. Look forward to meeting, hanging out with you guys the next day and a half.
Just a business note, through that door down there, second door on the right, where the foosball table is, there's bathrooms there. Then, of course, bathrooms up higher, the kitchen there. They're all busy, then you can go a little further to the entryway, there's bathrooms up there.